My first boyfriend was in a gang. Him and I just remember drinking, and we got into a physical altercation. I blacked out and I woke up in the hospital. What ended up coming about later was that I had been gang raped, and my parents were pressing charges, but before we could actually make it to court and get any answers, he was shot and killed. So at 13, that was a lot to process, and I just got into heavy drugs. I have a daughter who's 19. I got pregnant when I was 17. Not a good relationship, abusive. So I left her dad when she was only 3 months old. That has been a journey because I was a kid, pretty much raising a kid.
Myself and Priscilla met in California. I used to travel a lot for work. We went out on a date. Yeah, then I probably hit her with some hard questions, about, you interested in moving to Australia? Like, where do you see yourself?
We met Daniel when she was 13. And that was right when things started changing. She started to get into a rebellious stage, and I was working a lot, so I didn't really know how to handle it. I don't think that I had the mental capacity to be the mother that she needed.
I felt like I was the referee when the two women would argue. It went from friendship, then it probably went to the fact that she probably hated me because I was changing the dynamic within the family. I had a temper, I'm not gonna lie. I was, it's my way or the highway sort of person.
She right away hated him. And it was just, there was a lot of just fighting and chaos, and I don't think that's what we had pictured when we first moved here. And then I fell pregnant with Luna.
Priscilla and myself actually got married after we had Luna.
I felt very depressed, and I never felt a depression like that. A lot of it I know was hormonal, but I didn't expect it. Like it hit me in a way where I couldn't even leave my room. All these changes, and I'm still trying to process also losing my father. Like I had thoughts of why am I here? Hopeless, didn't want to live. I felt like I was under water and I could see the sun, but I just couldn't get there, like I couldn't breathe. So I tried visiting a few different churches. I couldn't really find anything I felt comfortable with, but I got a Bible. But when I started to talk about it with Daniel,
all hell broke loose. Literally, like when she decided that she wanted to start having a faith-led life, essentially, I was down a very different path in my life. I believed in God, but I had a pretty simple rule. He stays out of my house and I stay out of his. I didn't believe that church was a place that you had to go to or be involved in to have a relationship with God. I can just talk to him when I want to, and I can continue doing everything that I want to. I was probably out there running amok, not probably, I was out there running amok would be the best terminology. I was involved in things, let's say, that were illegal, criminal things, as well as I was running a multinational business. So I was living a double life, essentially. And the last thing I wanted to have in my life was the guilty conscience and Priscilla having all this faith and going to God, and here I am doing everything that's totally opposite.
And when I fell pregnant with Santiago, I got very scared that I was going to fall into that depression again. So I started looking for churches again. And that's how I came to LifeHouse. A friend of mine, not even Christian, she would get her eyelashes done by Jenna Lambert, and she knew I was looking for a church, so she was like, you should try this church Jenna tells me about. She went on the website and she signed me up for a visit, and then Wendy called me. So the first time I went to LifeHouse was Good Friday 2017. That was pretty much the turning point in my faith, because it started to answer a lot of questions that I had. I started just really embracing anything and everything I could. I was serving on Sundays, I was in life group, I was doing Alpha, I did the women to women course. So he thought I joined a cult.
Like I was really, really ticked off. Like she's going down a completely different direction, and it's come to the point where I'm just like, you keep going down this path and like, that's it, we're divorced, like I'm done.
So I made a decision that no matter Daniel's opinion, that I wasn't going to let him discourage me from my faith.
So the very thing that was making her better became that point of conflict.
I ended up making the decision to get baptized, and that was the first time Daniel stepped into LifeHouse. And he was angry. why are these people jumping up and down? This music, this is a joke.
I've walked in, I'm like, whoa, what's happening here? It's a cafe? Like, who does coffee in a church? This isn't a church. This is like, what's going on? It's a cult? Like, everybody's super nice. Like, yeah, they want something. And there's worship. People hands up, singing aloud to these songs. I'm like, this isn't like Hail Mary full of grace. After the baptism, we definitely continued to argue, saying I'm never gonna, be that Christian, or I'm never gonna be that person that would go to church, or that would read the Bible, or anything like that.
That at that time we were also experiencing a lot of issues with Emma, partying, school's not that important. She was almost to the point where she was gonna move out. And I just saw myself all over again. And as a last resort, I enrolled her into the youth vacation. And I just gave it to God. I said, obviously I'm praying for her salvation, but I want you to show her that she has purpose. And she went, she got saved, she got baptized. She came home having an encounter with God and knowing that she had a calling in her life.
She's gone full on into this thing, and I'm thinking, what's happening here? But I've seen such a positive change in her, a complete life-changing direction, and it was just like it was a breath of fresh air.
Emma one morning came into our room, very startled.
Ran into our room, like just banged the door open, and we're like, what's going on here? And come in and like spoken about this prophecy. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, here we go, another story. And she's opened up to about 3 things essentially. And one was, I was going to be humbled.
There's going to be a separation in the family. But after that, there's peace.
And then I was going to end up in ministry with Priscilla. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen.
And at that point, like if you knew what Daniel was doing and living, I'm like, I just don't, like you believe it because you know God can do anything. But you look at your husband and you're like, it's just, you don't see it. But not long after, Daniel started losing friends. And it was nothing that he did. And he went through like a really hard time. And so it was hard for me to watch, but it humbled him.
So this has started to happen. At the same time, we get the email from Department of Immigration. PR's been accepted, need to leave the country, so Priscilla and Emma have to leave so they can get their permanent residency. All of a sudden we get an email from the Immigration Department, and the title of the email was Notice of Intent to Cancel Visa.
Something unfavorable has come up. We're actually not going to approve you, and she can't come back until this is resolved, or maybe indefinitely.
Go and see a lawyer, we start the process. We need to tick all these boxes. This process is going to take 3 to 6 months. And that's if you get a yes. If you get a no, you'll end up in court, bang, 2 years later. I'm like, well, hold on, what do you mean? My kids are overseas too, my wife and my kids. No, you can't do that, I'm Australian. So this has really thrown a big spanner in the works. She's just shot from the hip and she's gone, look, unless you've got somebody in Doncaster or that area, we've got a federal minister there and sometimes they can help out. I'm like, no, have you got parents there, like brothers, cousins, uncles, aunties? No. And I'm thinking, I go, well, Priscilla attends a church that they have a campus over in Doncaster.
We needed to get character reference letters from people who knew me that could testify to what kind of life I was establishing in Australia and my character. So we ended up getting probably over 20 letters from the church, from leadership down to the girls in my life group. So Daniel had to go to church and he had to sit through some sermons, and he asked Pastor Derek if he would help, and Pastor Derek was more than willing. And so they go together to the minister's office and they have a meeting with him on a Thursday afternoon. And by Saturday morning, I had an approval. And not only did I have our temporary approval, they 15 minutes later sent us our permanent approval, which is a miracle in itself because that would have been a whole nother application and just all these things.
You know, like everything is starting to line up, and I'm like, you can have one coincidence, maybe two. You can't have that many coincidences. You know, I'm a person that deals in fact, and this chance, I always used to believe in luck. everything that I'd done so wrong in my life, I always thought, oh, I'm so lucky. Like it hasn't all caught up with me. And now I look back, I'm like, well, hold on, it's not luck. Jesus was always walking with me. I just wasn't walking with him, and he never turned his back on me.
And he had made a connection with Pastor Derek that opened up conversations that him and I couldn't have. Because anytime I would talk about faith, it was a fight.
So the opportunity then came to accept Jesus into my life and to get my salvation. So I've accepted Jesus into my life, and it's just a huge weight off my shoulders, and it's a huge change, because I've gone from one extreme of living this life of sin and this life of negativity to now trying to go down a path where I have to be righteous, and I want to be righteous.
There's still times where I'm looking at him worshiping, and I'm like, I could have never, ever, ever seen it.
Since the water baptism and since joining LifeHouse, I've become that person that I said I was never going to be, and going down that path that I said I never would have. I've joined all these teams, and I'm now in a ministry as well with Priscilla, LifeHouse Kitchen, where we're out there putting meals together for obviously the people that are in need within the church environment, and with a much bigger vision to take it out to the community in the future.
When Jesus came into our life, there was definitely an awakening in our family, and we definitely don't know where we would be without him, and there's no turning back.